All right, so it's a tremendous pleasure. This is Jason Dana Dunleavy coming to you from Buffalo, New York, interventional radiologist. And today we have Taylor Rapp, safety of the Buffalo Bills, and the notorious Wayne Olan, who's been on the show before. So why don't we start off just with a little intro. Taylor, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, like you said, safety for the Buffalo Bills. Last 4 years, I spent time with the LA Rams. Got drafted by the LA Rams. Went to University of Washington. Was a Husky. Shout out to the Dogs. They're doing great this year. But yeah, now grew up in Washington State. Stayed home for college and back out here to the East Coast in Buffalo now. It snowed here in Buffalo, as you know today on Halloween, which is a little different than LA.
Yeah, and I gotta say, it's incredible that you guys play in it. So actively snowing right now at your home and at your training camp. And so today, I assume you're training inside?
Yeah, well, actually, today's our player off day, Tuesday, and then we begin the week on Wednesday, tomorrow.
Sounds good. And what was it like? I know that, in this amazing city, there was a lot of excitement when you came to town. What was that transition like for you?
Yeah, I mean it's been awesome. Ever since I got here, I felt like the whole town, the whole city kind of, welcomed me with open arms, and I felt Bills Mafia right away, and just seeing the home games, some of the primetime games. When we played Miami, early in the season when we won pretty big, and Thursday night game, and then the Sunday night game, just full Bills Mafia in effect. It's it's unbelievable. I love the atmosphere, love being here.
Yeah, and awesome to have you and talking defense. I think that Josh talks a lot in the media, but he always credits the defense, and that I think that you guys have really done a lot to carry the team to some of these really close wins. What's it like in the locker room?
Yeah, I mean, guys are, obviously we've had a couple losses couple games get away from us this season, but I think the guys are, more motivated than ever right now. We're obviously in a good position right now, and obviously the season's so long, and obviously it's the NFL. You're gonna lose a few games and stuff, but it's just, it matters when you get hot and you play well, and I think we're trending up, and I can't wait for the second half of the season.
Absolutely, and I'll do a quick transition to Dr. Wayne Olan here, who is the director of interventional spine and endovascular neurosurgery. But we don't really care about those expertise. Let's talk about athletics and coaching. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm just an old weekend warrior. Grew up in a small country called Long Island, where you play a game called lacrosse growing up, and it really gets into your blood. And I've been playing as long as I could, and then I coach out here at a school called Georgetown Prep in Bethesda, Maryland, where Arthur Smith, the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons, is an alum, as well as a lacrosse player. So I'm kind of on both sides of the problem we're going to talk about today, because I have athletes just like Taylor I'm trying to protect, and then I have athletes who've undergone head injuries, and how do you get them back on the field safely and prepare them to get back out and trying to avoid going through it again.
I love it. And just to focus a little bit here, we're going to talk about Q-collar, and in the process of that, I have nothing personally to do with the company, just hosting here. And just to verify both of your involvement, neither of you are paid consultants as well. Is that correct?
Correct.
That's correct for me as well. You do have, though, because you got at least 3 of your Buffalo Bills wearing that collar. So you have a little bit vested in it, because you'd love to see these guys stay on the field.
That's true. And in fact, just with us starting to, plan this talk, which we planned for the past 2 hours, right? This just kind of came all about. But, various coaches in this town have been asking me about it. And actually, even though there's great saturation in the NFL in terms of the Buffalo Bills, there's very poor saturation in terms of utilization in children in this region. A lot of interest, and so I think this is great. A lot of people are interested in what you guys have to say. So why don't I shift back to Taylor and say kind of, what was athletics like for you growing up, and when did you think about utilizing Q-collar, and have you had any head injuries yourself?
Yeah. I've played sports my whole life growing up. I had an older brother, very sports centric family. We both played baseball and football growing up. Kind of early on played all sports, but, as we grew older, kind of narrowed it down to baseball and football, and just kind of, took off of football. Baseball was actually my first love. Ended up kind of giving it up and then kind of trying to focus on football. Ended up getting recruited, playing in college, and then here I am now. I actually started wearing the Q collar. The first season was all last season. I did suffer a brain injury 2 years ago when the Rams won Super Bowl 2021. I had a pretty bad concussion, and my agent actually heard about the Q collar, and he kind of just showed me it, forwarded me along, and told me all about it, and just kind of all off season, kind of just did a little more research, I guess, a little more playing around with it. I actually bought one, kind of just wearing it around, trying to see if I can wear it during the season, and ended up wearing it all last season, and it's still wear it now. I can't go out there on the football field without wearing the collar. It's basically like a helmet to me now. I can't walk out of the locker room to go out to the practice field without my collar.
Yeah, and so that gets us to some of the common questions. I mean, as myself, when I was 10 years old and we started wearing helmets in ski racing, I was hazed pretty heavily at that time. Now you couldn't imagine a kid in a ski race without a helmet, or even on the slopes. Any difficulty, in terms of when you got started, people giving you trouble for it?
No, not at all. I mean, I would actually say kind of more so on the flip side, guys are always weird about their style and swag, and, more so people asking me like, hey, what's that thing around your neck? Like that thing looks cool. Like, what does it do, or stuff like that. So I would say probably more so on that side, the positive side, rather than the negative side.
Fantastic. And, as you noted, right, I mean, it's kind of a synergistic relationship between you and your agent. Wayne's spoken about that before. What is the cost, for instance, of a military warrior, and, both high-level athletes and the military, the worst thing that could happen is an injury. Anything you want to address with that, Wayne?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, right, that's where the birth of the collar comes from. Collar is a military device. It was born in the military. It was developed by a military physician, and it was developed to protect our warfighters. Special forces protect our warfighters. And so, and Taylor does it every day. He's doing the same thing every day. So it was kind of a synergistic movement into sports, as you got into some of the sports where head injuries are much more prevalent, or even much more assumed. But you have a lot of sports now, including like yours, ski racing and sliding and NASCAR driving, where people are utilizing the collar and finding, the benefit there as well, not just from the one-on head injury, but from vibration and other things where you can minimize brain movement. So, clearly this thing was born on a battlefield, and it has found its way onto the football field, which is essentially a natural progression.
And we'll get a little nerdy here. Can you teach us a little bit about functional MRI or DTI?
Yeah, so we can teach you a little bit about that. So that's where the study was. I mean, eventually you have to look at something and prove its value, right? You can't just say, hey, put this on, it looks like a good idea. And so that's where the study was done, using DTI imaging. What you did is look for white matter lesions. And you had to also find a group of athletes that, in theory, or you hope, probably don't have any. And that's why the studies were centered in high school athletes. And you basically have 500 athletes, half wear the collar, half don't. And you all got MRIs before the season, all got MRIs after the season. And they even had MRIs carried out for 2 to 3 years out after. And this was done at St. Xavier High School in Cincinnati, Cincinnati Children's Hospital. And, 70% of the athletes who wore the collar, this number is kind of striking, right? 77% of athletes who wore the collar had no changes. And you understand this statement of a shear injury, where your gray and your white matter come together. That's where the brain is almost the most susceptible to motion injury, shear injuries, where it could turn and it could tear. because those two portions of the brain are anchored differently, and they will accelerate differently when the brain is either accelerating or decelerating. 70% of the athletes at the end of the year had no changes who were wearing the collar. If you weren't wearing the collar, and these are high school athletes now, remember, this isn't college or professional, 73% of those athletes had gray-white shearing injuries that they didn't have at the beginning of the year. That's a striking number if it's your child. And so, I mean, that was where the birth of it came from. Obviously a lot of animal studies and stuff like that before, but at the end of the day, when you see a number like that with a device that carries no risk, hard to discount that kind of data on a sample size that large.
Yeah, and I think, let's switch to that, the no risk. I think Taylor was alluding to that a little bit, but, it was even studied, right, of looking at people's cognitive ability, visual acuity. Taylor, sounds like you did your own testing, so to speak, as well, right, to see how you felt before and after wearing it at home, wearing it at training?
Yeah, definitely. And I would say one of the biggest effects in change that I felt wearing it all last season and then wearing it all this season as well is how well I feel after I play a game or after I have a practice that I wear with contact. In previous years without wearing the collar, like you'd make a couple tackles, and I mean football's like every tackle is like a car crash. And so, I mean, before I started wearing the collar, your neck would get so sore the day after a game or a practice where you had contact, your shoulders, your traps, everything. But ever since I started wearing the collar, I noticed one huge change in how I felt the next day, the next morning after the game or after a contact training camp practice where we had a lot of contact and stuff like that. That's been the biggest change, and I, feel great the next morning, next day.
That's fantastic. And Wayne, do you want to speak to a little bit how they studied that specifically?
Well, that aspect is, when you look at studies-wise, is really in the works, right? Because the studies that got the FDA clearance were based on games. But the military now, and we just got a $3 million grant through the military and doing some much longer range studies for much longer wears than just an NFL game or a college game or a high school game. And they have to evaluate stuff. So, like, if you have a sharpshooter, he's a Navy SEAL or he's a Delta Force warrior, at the end of a 12-hour shift, he has to fill out an evaluation form. And there's no doubt that we're seeing that military fighters are testing as good as they did at the end of a shift as they did earlier in this shift, which is a huge change to the guys who aren't wearing the collar. But that's anecdotal right now, but it will at one point become part of the literature, that's for sure.
So maybe you could address on another level then, would say, so why does this work, right? You use your woodpecker analogy, and why is that not a problem?
Okay, well, first and foremost, it works by basically, and the idea behind it is to stabilize the brain inside your skull. How do you do that? And if you increase the size of your veins, which are between the brain and the skull, not deep inside, you can then minimize the movement. The best analogy is almost like putting on a seatbelt, right? You now basically put a seatbelt on your brain so it can't move inside your skull when your brain, your body, your skull, everything accelerates and decelerates at very high velocities. So that's all it does. It's the reason why it's not significant clinically just to wear it, because it's not an occlusion. It's just a 30% diminished in venous return. It's 1.5 pounds of pressure. It's exactly the same pressure as wearing a necktie. So if Taylor's at a game during church and the game breaks out, he's protected. It's the same exact thing. Basically, all you're doing is kinking. You're not occluding, and that's very important because people like to sort of characterize that. You're not occluding the jugular vein, you're just kinking it a little bit and slowing the blood out. And it's not more than a teaspoon or a couple teaspoons of blood that it takes. And we have MRIs that show the different size of your venous sinuses, the collar on and the collar off. And it's not subtle. So basically that's what it does. It holds your brain steady inside of your skull. And that's why there's, you think about vibrations or anything like that. Or if you're a NASCAR driver, you're making left turns, 200 miles an hour, where your brain's getting pushed against one side of your skull the entire race. there may be a benefit there as well. Your just brain is held a little tighter on the inside. That's been shown in nature as well to be, helpful. And it seems like it's starting to pan out here. We're just trying to spread the word.
And Taylor, anyone you want to mention in terms of, your friends at the collegiate level or NFL level that have either had head injuries or are wearing this, and kind of their thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I've had several teammates, colleagues, guys across the league that I know of that all have been wearing Q collar ever since last season, coming on this season. I think it's become more prevalent in the NFL world, especially this season as well. Just seeing the amount of guys wearing the Q collar and stuff, and just having conversations around the locker room, and everyone wanting to try it, and wanting to see and ask questions about it. At one point, I think we had about 4 or 5 guys. I think right now with the Bills, guys who wear it on a consistent basis. I mean, you saw Dalton Kincaid, the star tight end, got drafted out of Utah. He was he actually suffered a brain injury earlier this season, and he started wearing the Q collar, and I think that's going to be an essential piece of his equipment moving forward now. So it's it's just amazing to see. Like I said, like Wayne, we're just trying to spread the word. I think this game means so much to me, and means so much to everyone, and everyone's trying to figure out how we can make it more sustainable, more safe for everyone. And I think the Q collar is a big piece to that.
Yeah. As a member of the Mafia, like you were saying, I mean, for personal success reasons, we want you guys to stay healthy. But you've also seen, right, the Mafia has really come out just in ways that have nothing to do with the success of the team, but just kind of caring about the players. And, I think everyone was noticing your great play, Kincaid's great play. What is this new cool color, that people are wearing? Because are there some fines that can go with you if you don't wear the right colors?
That's a whole nother world we're talking about with the NFL fines and stuff. It's a little bit of controversy. I'm not going to touch on it too much, but I mean, there's some uniform fines that are pretty egregious out there. But Q collar, actually, they have all different color sleeves and everything. As long as we stick to blue, red, white, or black, we should be fine, especially with the Q collar sleeves as well.
And any involvement, I'll switch to Wayne after this, but Taylor, you still have a massive impact on all the young athletes coming up in the world. Some NFL players have said that they wish that they had this when they were a kid. Any thoughts you have for kids playing football, lacrosse, or soccer right now, or do you influence them at all?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I wish I had this. I wish the collar was, more out there when I was growing up and playing. And, I think that's where it starts. I think that's where, hopefully guys like me and us just trying to spread the movement, trying to get it to the youth sports, because I think that's where it starts, and that's where it's really important, especially for, the younger kids who, are playing tackle football and don't necessarily have the experience or, technique on how to tackle. And, that's where it's most important to do everything they can to protect their brain. And so, just trying to get it out there and try to get it out in the youth contact sports as much as possible is definitely important.
And Wayne, you want to touch on it too, as a father and as a coach?
Yeah, I mean, for me, and he's touched on it too, right? In the pros, it's obviously one thing, but the best ability is being available, right? Be available. And in college, if he had a head injury, if he's in high school, school doesn't stop. His brain's still growing. You hate to see, a growing brain get injured, but school doesn't stop. He can't sit in a dark room for 3 weeks, not look at his phone, not look at his computer. And so, we have, most of our team now at prep, at the high school I coach, is wearing it. And, once you adapt to it, and there's a little bit of peer pressure, but as he stated, it's positive, not negative. You look around the locker room and you're like, this guy's doing everything he can to stay on the field. This guy should maybe think about doing that. And so kind of that's where we're at with it, and just want to give everybody the opportunity to, to take a look at it. And, nobody wants to change this game, right? We all played it. And like Taylor said, man, everybody loves the game. But without changing it, can we make it safer? Maybe we can.
And again, not to get too crazy, but again, can you go back a little bit to Cincinnati Children's and just talk a little bit about the details? As Taylor nicely noted, the way that he makes a hit is like a car accident. And, DTI is what people think about, right? I mean, when we talk about that form of injury, we're talking about looking at patients after a car accident, coup, contra coup, various types of details like that. And maybe you can explain a little bit more, what do white matter changes mean?
Well, one is, they don't always measure clinically, right? Much more subtle necessarily than a clinical change or something that somebody would admit to. A white matter change shows that your brain has undergone trauma. And at the end of the day, just so we're clear, we didn't just study, or the study just didn't include football players. It was football, hockey, lacrosse, girls and boys, soccer as well, right? Girls soccer. I mean, there's data that came out in Europe showing that if you're a professional women's soccer player, your risk of dementia is significantly increased, like X by X factors. I mean, those are frightening things. And in soccer, they talk about not letting youth kids head the ball just for that reason, to protect the youth. The reason why you study children is they should not have white matter injuries. You're making a sort of assumption that you're dealing with sort of a clean brain at that point. And now you talk about the number of kids that came out of high school with documented and visible, not subtle, visible brain injury, even if it wasn't clinically significant, makes you really think twice, because you just keep doing it over, repeating it. The repetitive head injury, that's where the risk really is. Everybody sees somebody get blown up once, and that's you do, but over and over and over again, kind of like cigarette smoking, kind of like sun tanning, kind of like all those things where, yeah, maybe smoking one cigarette isn't terrible, but 1,000 hits to your frontal lobe, they start adding up. And, the correlations and things like that, long-term effects, people talk about them. And if there's a way we can hopefully help out, make everything safer. You're not stopping bump skiing, Dana. I know you.
Speed is what I need.
You might want to try and put a collar on when you do it.
That's right. So, and I don't know if you can address this, Wayne, but, I don't think people realize, there are studies, right? 2014, 16, 17, 18, there's quite a lot of data on Q-collar. And how did financially all of that get accomplished?
Well, very good question. The company has not paid for a single study. Now, obviously, you got to supply collars. So, you get past that. But every single study that's been done was by an independent evaluator. Every single one. The ones out of Emory, the ones out of Cincinnati, everything you looked at is by an independent evaluator. So there's no bias in that respect. Obviously, the study that got FDA clearance, that also was done without bias by the evaluators. And so it's hard to look at it and say, well, we biased somebody, by paying for it, because nobody was. There are at least 25 peer-reviewed studies, as you say, since 2014, and not one of them has an evaluator who was sort of, as you say, potentially biased.
Taylor, give this one to you, but you can turf it if you want. One of the things that a couple coaches have asked me is, I want to order these for my kids and also for the athletes on my team, but I don't really understand, the sizing, and that makes me nervous, that's the one way I wonder if I could harm them. Can you explain how the sizing works?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually pretty simple, actually. In every Q-collar package, they actually have a little sizer. So you basically, you kind of guesstimate, what your size would be. And the package actually comes with a little sizer. I think actually, Wayne, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but before you actually buy, you can buy like a sizing kit.
There are a couple ways of doing it. You could do it that way, or you could just take a string, wrap it around your neck. It's kind of, a very thin string, like you were measuring yourself for a dress shirt. Exactly like if you went to the tailor, Dana. You go to the tailor, you get measured for a dress shirt. Intuitively, though, it would sound like if the collar's slightly uncomfortable, a bigger one would be more comfortable, but that's not the case.
Yeah, I got messed up with that because I thought, Yeah, I thought I needed a bigger one, but I actually
You
needed a smaller
one. Because,
Yes,
Dana,
correct.
where the discomfort comes from the collar is not its pressure on your sternocleidomastoids, but it's if it scrapes your trachea. If it scrapes your trachea, it's really too big. So you really want it that, as you know, Taylor would tell you the same thing. It's like a 2-inch gap here that lets your trachea sort of stand on its own. It's easy to do. And then if, say, somehow you went online and bought one, for your daughter, she's driving a sled for Team USA in the next Olympics, you send it back, they'll send you another one. But now we're starting to see as teams are starting to become more educated and apt. There are whole sizing kits you could put in locker rooms. So like our high school locker room has a sizing kit. We have one collar of almost every size. Kid gets to try one. Boom, off the shelf it comes. Onto it goes a prep sleeve. As Taylor said, either a blue one or a silver one. And so they're fairly easy to do, but the big takeaway with the sizing is if it's the wrong size, chances are it's too big.
So let's take that a little further. It sounds like you've already done what I was thinking is the appropriate thing. Is there a way to get the sizing in the hands of the coaches in the region?
Well, there is. It's not even really in the coaches, it's more in the training rooms. And the training rooms, there is. They would get a pack. We have the company has a sizing pack, so it'll be a collar of every size. Players can come in and try them, and then a lot of schools and teams now are keeping some inventory on the shelf. So they just pull off the one, and then the kid could try it for a while, and you could wash them. So someone else, they're made out of Fitbit plastic, so they used to being rubbed up against. Some people like the way the sleeve feels. Some people like the way the plastic feels. That's just more of a difference. The plastic ones are blackened, and for the military, it comes in 4 different types of camo, because obviously the plastic ones have some, fluorescent green on them, Seattle Seahawks green, and you can't have that out in the dark in the desert, so that would be bad.
And Taylor, do you want one of these or 20 of these? What do you think is the right number?
How many do I own?
I think that's the thing, right? Is you're wondering,
I know in
stinky.
the locker room. I know in the locker room I have. Well, no, I actually don't even really wash it because I wear a sleeve basically every game, and then I just kind of toss the sleeve and kind of use that sleeve as the barrier. But I've used the same collar all season for every game. And
Dana, there's a spring in the back. I don't mean to interrupt. So the spring is usually lasts for at least 3 to 4 years. Most athletes, because they're still growing, will grow out of their collar long before the collar ever breaks. The collar also, if we add one, will straighten all the way. If, God forbid, you had to take it off of somebody. You know what I mean? It can come off easily in the face of needing to take it off.
Yeah.
So the collar itself, you're only going to need one. You're more likely to lose it than outgrow it. You're more likely, for your trainer not to pack it in your bag than you are to not have it. So, but as he says, it's his helmet now. It's the same. And for the guys we have playing, it's the same way. They don't step on the field without it now. And it's like the last thing they put on.
Right. Sorry to interrupt you, Wayne, but
no worries,
like
Taylor.
you said right there, like as our equipment guys are packing our game bags, if we're going on the road or even when we're at home, they pack the bags to take them down to the locker room. Like that's one thing that I make sure every time, like, cleats, helmet, shoulder pads, everything, like they make sure that's in there. But I make sure every time before I send it off, I hand it off or I confirm that it's good, that my collar's in there. And that's like, it's just an essential piece of equipment. I don't think I could play a game right now without the collar. That's how much, it's part of my equipment, and it's how much it's, important to me.
That's great to hear. And just to take it a level further, if you're a cyclist or if you ride horses, the general rule is if anything touches your helmet, you replace it. Is there any thought with that, these are designed that if they have any type of impact or damage, they need to be replaced, or they're pretty durable?
We haven't seen any of that. First of all, they're military grade. And you mentioned horse riding, the U.S. equestrian team has them, interestingly. But they're U.S. military. They are. This thing is born on the battlefield. We've said it already. So you could throw it out of the plane. You could take it down to 200 feet below sea level. You could light it on fire. Nothing's happening to it. So if it touches his helmet, it's going to be fine. It can touch a military helmet. You don't need to throw it out. They are military grade. They are made to be worn in battle.
And then, Taylor, maybe you could just go back to some big hits. I mean, we know you make some big tackles, and, another guy like you, right, Rodney Harrison, has talked about some of the long-term impacts for him in terms of head injuries. Do you talk to him or others that have suffered long-term with the game?
I mean, no, I haven't talked to Rodney. I've briefly spoke to Luke Kuechly. I know he was kind of a big kind of forefront guy, proponent, that kind of started and launched to launch this whole collar. But I mean, like you said, at the end of the day, football is football, and I'm not gonna change the way I play. Hopefully, like Wayne, kind of touched on, hopefully we can change or make things safer within the game. We're not gonna change how the game's played, change the rules or anything like that. And just like with everything, I'm gonna do everything I can. I'm big in terms of doing everything I can, the 1%, I'm doing everything right. And this is one big thing that, I'll continue to keep doing. And it's kept me safe for the last 2 years. And sometimes it can be a violent game. Like I said, every tackle seems like a car crash. And, just to have the peace of mind of having the collar to give me that extra protection, that extra peace of mind to play free and play the game the way the game's meant to be played is, it means everything.
When you hear someone like him say it too, and I know him, so he puts so much effort into recovery. He puts so much effort into what he eats, how he trains, right? Why wouldn't you do whatever you could to protect yourself as well without having to change anything? He doesn't notice it. He doesn't feel it, but he's doing everything he can to make sure he's on that field for as long as he can play.
Yeah, and thinking long-term on that too, there's been various discussions about, NFL players and opioid use and various other techniques to handle pain after the games. Coming up soon, a colleague of mine that started, it's called the Matters organization, to reduce opioid overdoses. CNN's coming to town to do an interview about that because it's been so successful in New York to reduce hospitalizations and again, complications with medications. Have you, either of you can take this one, discuss that this plays a role at all in kind of the long-term impact of reducing systemic medications?
If you think about what we're trying, repetitive head injury, right? That's what you're trying to, so you're talking about headaches, you're talking about the long-term effects. Most of that, in theory, there's going to be a whole different set of issues as well as risk and as well as outcomes. So we're trying to keep, guys like him, their cognition stable and uniform throughout his life. I mean, he's a young kid right now, but he's got life after this, right? He's going to have a family. He's going to have a wife. He's going to have kids. He wants to play around with them. He wants to get on the ground and roll around with them and do all that stuff and be able to be the husband and be the father that he dreamed of being. And I think whether the medications or whatever will be involved in it, I think it gives him the best opportunity to play the career that he dreamed about without it stopping, but then going on to live the life that he's dreaming about as well, that his career is going to enable him to do.
Taylor, anything on that, whether, it be you personally or, other guys that are dealing with chronic pain or headaches?
Yeah, I mean, Wayne kind of touched on it, just having the peace of mind of just wearing the collar and having the peace of mind of, doing everything I can to ensure that future that Wayne is talking about, that my, future kids, that I'll be, a big part in their lives and, be the husband that I've always dreamed of being, like Wayne said. And, cause like you said, there is life after football, this football, this game is such a short period of life. Like I'll still have, 3/4 of my life after I'm done playing, and just knowing that I'm doing everything I can by wearing the collar, just gives me that extra peace of mind. I hopefully won't have to, go down that path that you talked about with, medications, opioids, all that.
Sounds great. And I think, why don't we give you guys each opportunity for closing remarks, like what you think this could have as an impact, both for friends, colleagues, and kids growing up?
Well, I'll start because I think his statement's going to be more powerful at the end. But at the end of the day, this is about protecting yourself, but being part of protecting the legacy and watching guys be able to go out and do, kids, and forget the sport. It's not just about football. It's not just about lacrosse, not about hockey, soccer. I think you're finding that the uses for this are much, much greater than people even imagine. And then on top of that, one of the hugest privileges we have is protecting our warfighters. To know that we're doing something to protect the guys who are protecting us. Yeah, I mean, you can't even put a price or a pride level on that. You get to see it play out on Sundays, but you don't know about the guy who's dug in a foxhole or sitting up, in a stand somewhere, and he's out the one out protecting us when we're not watching. So I think, the opportunity to do something like this is such a privilege for me, and to watch Taylor go out and do his thing every Sunday to the level that he does it, and knowing that at night he can go home and and he doesn't have to shake it off, so to speak, and he's not getting his bell rung, and he's, he can be the kid, be the player, be the man he wants to be. I can't even describe the privilege this is for me to be part of this.
Yeah, like Wayne said, it's all about the future. I'm, like you said at the start of this, I'm not getting paid to do this. It's all about spreading the word and trying to get the word out about this thing, because I think it's so powerful, and I think it can. This is kind of drastic, but I think it could change the world in everything, not only sports, like Wayne said. I think it just, the potential it has to change everything, change all these games, change the youth, change everything. I think it's all about the future. And so, like Wayne said, it's just, it means the world to me, for me to be able to speak on it and being a guy that has worn it and been through it, had a severe brain injury 2 years ago, and ever since never played a game without the collar, and how much of it's an essential piece of equipment for me now. I think it means the world to me, that I can speak on it, and hopefully spread the word to everyone, and try to get this thing out there as much as possible.
Beautiful. Love it. And again, we're extremely grateful to have you in this town. And, I think you've seen the mafias out there in the rain and the snow, and at the airport waiting when your flights are delayed.
Yep.
And, even whether it's an injury on the Bills or whether there's something, related to the Bills on a team somewhere else, the support is pretty strong. So I know that they're all thankful to see you and listen to you, and look forward to watching you at the next game.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me on.